Have you ever stopped to think that the very words you're hearing right now, the ones I'm speaking, connect you to billions of other people? Well, they do, through a shared, ancient mystery. Today, we're going on an adventure, a linguistic detective story, to piece together a lost world using the only clues it left behind: its words. Okay, so let's just jump right in. On the screen, you see two words for the number 10. On the left, we've got decem from Latin, the language of ancient Rome. And on the right, dasha from Sanskrit, spoken thousands and thousands of miles away in ancient India. Just say them out loud with me. Decem, dasha. I mean, come on, that similarity is it's uncanny, right? So yeah, how is that even possible? Is it just some massive, mind-blowing coincidence? Or is it a clue? This little puzzle is the smoking gun in a linguistic detective story that stretches across continents and thousands of years. So what on earth could possibly connect them? Well, the answer is it's not a coincidence at all, not even close. Linguists are now pretty much certain that these languages, along with hundreds of others, are all children of a single common ancestor, a language that was never actually written down, a lost mother tongue. And this lost language has a name: Proto-Indo-European, or just PIE for short. Now, we call it a reconstructed language because it's kind of like a linguistic ghost. No one's ever seen it written down, but we can know it was there by studying its descendants. Everything from English and Spanish to Russian and Hindi. So the big question is, how do you reconstruct a language that nobody has heard spoken for over 5,000 years? Well, it turns out it's part science, part hardcore detective work. You could almost call it linguistic forensics. The main tool in the kit is something called the comparative method. And you can think of it like tracing a family resemblance, like how you might have your grandfather's nose. Linguists get a whole bunch of related words, these are what we call cognates, from all the different daughter languages. Then they look for patterns, really predictable ways that sounds have changed over time. And by following those patterns backward, they can figure out what the original parent word must have sounded like. And the crazy thing is, these changes aren't random at all. They follow really strict rules. For example, a P sound in a Proto-Indo-European word, we mark it with that little asterisk to show it's reconstructed, it reliably became an F sound in Germanic languages like English. And that's exactly why the Latin word pater is a cousin to our word father. Or look at that ancient D sound. In English, it often shifted to a T, which is precisely how we get our word 10 from the same root as the Latin decem. It's like a code. But this is where it gets really cool. Because by reconstructing hundreds of these words, we're not just rebuilding some ancient dictionary. We are literally painting a portrait of the people who spoke this language, of the world they lived in. So let's start with their society. The words they used for family, for kinship, they tell us a ton about their social roles and how they saw the world. I mean, you find the words you'd expect, right? Like bretter, which is clearly the root of brother, and swessor for sister. But then, get this, the word gwyn meant woman or wife. Okay, that's the ancestor of the Greek word gune, but it also evolved into our English word queen. That gives us a really fascinating hint about the status of women in their society. And their social code was super complex, especially when it came to dealing with people who weren't part of their immediate group, with outsiders. And this whole idea is just perfectly captured in one of the most revealing words of all, hostis. This one word meant stranger, but it gave us both guest and host. And if that's not weird enough, it also gave us the word hostile. So in this one single root, you can see this deep-seated tension. A stranger was someone you had a sacred duty to welcome, but they were also always a potential threat. We can also tell they weren't just hunter-gatherers, not by a long shot. Their vocabulary is absolutely packed with the language of a herding culture. Yeah, their world was full of domesticated animals. They had words like wos for cow and equos for horse. But check out this crazy economic link. The word peku meant livestock, but it also meant wealth. This root is the direct ancestor of our modern English word fee and the Latin word for money, pecunia. For these people, wealth wasn't gold. It was literally counted in cattle. And they weren't just herders either. Their words point to some of the absolute most important technological innovations of the ancient world. They were innovators. I mean, their vocabulary reveals some total game changers. They had a word, queklo, for the wheel, which of course is related to the Greek kleklos, meaning circle. They also had eugome for a yoke, that beam used to harness animals together. And in a twist you probably didn't see coming, this same root for joining together also gave Sanskrit the word yoga, which means union. How cool is that? So you take this combination of farming, herding, and this amazing technology, and it allowed the speakers of this language to spread far and wide. So what's the result? Well, today, an estimated 45% of the entire world's population speaks a language that comes from Proto-Indo-European. That is staggering. This lost language is anything but dead. Its legacy is just enormous. But, and this is a big but, our linguistic detective story has a modern, very controversial twist. Because, as it turns out, reconstructing an ancient past isn't just some dusty academic exercise. It's deeply, deeply tangled up with modern identity and politics. The search for where our language comes from has, for many, become a search for where we come from, our cultural origins. And that gives these ancient, reconstructed words immense modern power. Now, it's really important to understand that this field is far from settled. The location of the original PIE homeland is one of the most heated topics in modern archaeology and linguistics. Theories about who spoke this language first can get completely wrapped up in claims of national and cultural ancestry. And as you can see in discussions around topics like anti-India linguistics, this research isn't just for academics. It's part of very passionate, very political, and very current conversations about who gets to claim this ancient heritage. And that really gets to the heart of why these debates are so intense. Because when we trace the history of our words, we are, in a very real and personal sense, tracing the story of ourselves. Which leaves us with one final, really important question to think about. What happens when the story of our words becomes the story of who we are?